In August of 2024, Andrew Huberman stumbled upon something that Carl Jung had mapped out with stunning precision back in 1921. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was scientific validation of a psychological secret, one that academia has tried to bury for an entire century. In his episode with Dr. Kay Tai from MIT, Huberman confirmed the existence of loneliness neurons, specific neurons in the amygdala that detect social isolation and trigger real physical suffering. But here's what he didn't explicitly say. These same neurons in some people function in reverse. They don't just detect loneliness, they detect everything, every emotion nearby, every unspoken lie, every hidden pain. Jung called these people rare personality types. Modern science calls them true empaths. And you're about to discover why only 4% of the population carries this neurological aura, and why the rest are just faking empathy. If you feel like you absorb people's emotions without permission, if crowds drain you as if they're stealing your energy, if you always know when someone's lying even before they speak, then you carry the signature that Jung discovered, and Huberman has just validated with brain neuroimaging. But there's a problem. No one's taught you how to use this aura. No one's explained why it exists, and even worse, 96% of the people around you don't feel what you feel. So they think you're too sensitive, too weak, that you need to toughen up. That's a lie. You don't need to toughen up anything. You need to understand what Jung discovered about rare psychological types and what Huberman proved about hyper-responsive mirror neurons, because this combination creates what neuroscience calls a true empathic brain and what Jung called an introverted feeling intuitive personality. I'm talking about people who possess mirror neurons working in overdrive. This isn't a metaphor, it's neurobiology. A study published in 2024 confirmed it. True empaths have mirror neuron activation 300% above the population average. 300. That means when someone in the room feels anxiety, your mirror neurons fire as if you were feeling anxiety. When someone hides anger behind a smile, your amygdala detects the incongruence even before you consciously process it. Your brain functions as an emotional scanner that you never asked for and can't turn off. Jung knew this back in 1921. He described it in psychological types. But he didn't have neuroimaging. He didn't have functional MRI. So he mapped it through pure observation, from patient analysis, from patterns that repeated in his practice. And what he discovered was chilling. Jung realized that some people don't process emotions as external stimuli. They process other people's emotions as direct internal experience. In other words, for a true empath, feeling someone else's pain isn't imagination. It's real physical sensation caused by genuine limbic activation. Huberman proved this. In his episode with Dr. Alan Shaw in August of 2024, he explored how relationships shape the brain through the cingulate amygdala circuit. And here's the revelation. This circuit, in empaths, is permanently hyperactive, not because of trauma, but because of innate neurological configuration. You were born with it. But here's what no one told you. This configuration has a brutal cost, and it has an incredible power. And the difference between cost and power depends on one thing. Whether you integrate the Jungian shadow or let it consume you. Because listen closely, every true empath carries a gigantic shadow, and the empath's shadow is the most dangerous of all. You know why? Because the empath's shadow is the denial of their own anger. It's the suppression of healthy aggression. It's the projection of unconditional kindness while inside you're dissolving. Jung warned about this. He said, the more light you project, the bigger the shadow you hide. And empaths project light like no one else, so their shadow is proportional, enormous, dense, full of repressed rage, never established boundaries, and a killer desire to say no that has never been released. But here's the secret that Huberman discovered without realizing it. The empath's shadow isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the protection mechanism that neuroplasticity created to balance the hyper-empathy. The problem is that 99% of empaths suppress the shadow instead of integrating it. And when you suppress the shadow of an empath, three things happen. First, chronic emotional burnout. You become everyone's sponge, and no one recharges you. Second, attraction of narcissists and emotional parasites. They detect a non-integrated empath like a shark detects blood. Third, nervous system collapse. Your amygdala enters permanent threat mode because you're betraying your own neurological boundaries. I'm going to show you the study that proves this, and the protocol that Jung created and Huberman validated without knowing. But first, I need you to understand something. If you're a true empath, you're not a victim. You're not too sensitive. You weren't born to suffer. You were born with a rare neurological configuration that gives you access to social information that other brains don't pick up. You're a scanner. You're a detector of emotional patterns. You're the type of person that Jung called those who see the invisible. But there's a problem. Society has trained you to use this gift to people please, to serve, to be a nice guy, girl, and it's killing you. So now I'm going to reveal what Jung discovered about this rare aura, and what Huberman proved about the neural mechanisms, and in the end, you'll have a hybrid protocol that integrates shadow and empathy into a single tool for individuation. First thing Jung discovered, only 4% of the population possesses the psychological type that he classified as introverted feeling intuitive. This type corresponds to what we now call a true empath or highly sensitive person. Interesting coincidence. Andrew Huberman is classified as an ENTJ, a personality type that represents only 4% of the population as well. Rare types recognize rare types. But what makes these 4% different? Jung mapped out three central characteristics. Characteristic 1, direct emotional perception. It's not that you understand other people's emotions. It's that you feel other people's emotions as if they were yours. Your brain doesn't make a clear distinction between internal and external stimuli when it comes to affect. Dr. Keitai explained this on the Huberman Lab podcast. She discovered that the amygdala doesn't just process your own fear. It processes observed fear with the same neural intensity. In empaths, this processing is amplified. Characteristic 2, intolerance to incongruence. You detect lies, falsehoods, social masks with surgical precision, not because you're paranoid, but that's because their medial prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for theory of mind, works in overdrive. You read micro-expressions. You pick up on tone of voice. You sense when words don't match the energy. Carl Jung called this the dominant feeling function. Andrew Huberman calls it a hyperactive mirror neuron system. Same thing, different angles. Characteristic number 3, disproportionate social exhaustion. It's not that you dislike people. It's that people literally drain you. Each social interaction activates your limbic system. Each conversation is intense emotional processing. Every emotionally charged environment overwhelms you because you're not just existing in the environment, you're absorbing the environment. Mirror neurons have no off switch. These three characteristics create what Jung called a rare psychological aura. It's not spiritual. It's neurological. It's observable. It's measurable. And Huberman has proven every single one of them. In the episode with Dr. Muck Brackett in August 2024, Huberman discussed how to increase emotional intelligence. And here's the twist. Brackett explains that emotional intelligence can be trained, but true empathy cannot. True empathy is a baseline configuration. It's neural architecture. You're either born with it or you're not. True empaths don't need to learn empathy. They need to learn how not to drown in the empathy of others. And this is where the Jungian shadow comes in. Jung discovered that every empath carries a gigantic shadow of repressed aggression. Why? Because from childhood, you were rewarded for being sensitive, gentle, helpful, and punished for being aggressive, selfish, direct. So you buried all that aggression in the shadow, all that healthy selfishness, all those necessary boundaries, and now you're an adult. And you keep saying yes when you want to say no. You keep helping when you should refuse. You keep absorbing other people's pain when you should set a boundary, and your body is killing you for it. Anxiety, chronic fatigue, burnout, autoimmune diseases, all of that is the unintegrated shadow taking its toll. Huberman explains the mechanism. When you betray your boundaries repeatedly, your autonomic nervous system becomes dysregulated. Your vagus nerve loses tone, your cortisol response becomes chronic. And you develop what neuroscience calls central sensitization. Your brain starts interpreting normal stimuli as a threat because you're chronically in survival mode. The solution isn't to suppress the empathy. The solution is to integrate the shadow. And Jung created a protocol for that, a protocol that Huberman validates in every episode about neuroplasticity without ever citing Jung directly. The protocol is called individuation through the shadow, and it has 4 neuroplastic phases. Phase 1, recognition of the empathic shadow. Feel and write down all the times you said yes and wanted to say no. All the times you helped and felt resentment. All the times you absorbed someone else's emotion and then had a meltdown alone. This activates your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. You take the shadow out of the unconscious and bring it into conscious processing. Neuroplastically, you're creating new neural pathways of self-awareness. Phase 2, confrontation with healthy aggression. Practice saying no without explaining. Practice setting a boundary without apologizing. Practice being selfish in small doses. Does it feel wrong? Great. That discomfort is the shadow emerging. Jung said, "You don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Huberman would say, "You don't change behavior by avoiding discomfort, but by exposing yourself to it in a controlled way." Same thing. Phase 3, integration through action. Now you act. Refuse a request for help that will drain you. Leave an emotionally toxic environment without guilt. Let someone feel their own emotion without you absorbing it. Each of these actions is neuroplasticity in real time. You're rewiring limbic circuits. You're teaching your amygdala that setting a boundary isn't a threat, it's protection. Phase 4, neural recovery protocol. Here, Huberman comes in directly. After each intense social interaction, you do a vagal regulation protocol, physiological sigh breathing, 2 quick inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth. This activates your parasympathetic system and takes you out of sympathetic mode. Exposure to sunlight in the morning to reset cortisol. And most importantly, intentional solitude, not isolation. Solitude. Time alone without external emotional stimuli for your brain to process and integrate. That's the Jung-Huberman hybrid protocol for true empaths. And here's what happens when you integrate. Your empathy doesn't diminish. It becomes directed. You don't absorb emotion from just anyone. You choose when to open and when to close. Your shadow doesn't disappear. It becomes an ally. That repressed aggression becomes healthy assertiveness. that denied selfishness becomes legitimate self-care. And the aura shifts. People around you feel differently. Narcissists stop seeking you out. They detect that you've integrated the shadow and you no longer serve as a source of supply. Healthy people respect you more because you set boundaries, and that creates relational safety. And you feel differently, less exhausted, less overwhelmed, more centered. Because you've stopped betraying your neurology. Jung discovered this by observing patients. Huberman proved it by measuring brains. And now you have the map. But there's one last secret. There's a subgroup of empaths that Jung never fully mapped, and science has only discovered now. They're the dark empaths. 20% of true empaths fall into this category. They have all the empathic abilities: hyperactive mirror neurons, accurate emotional reading. But they integrate the shadow differently. They use empathy as a tool, as a strategy, as a weapon. They aren't narcissists. Narcissists don't feel real empathy. Dark empaths do feel it, but they choose when to act based on it. They understand your pain and consciously decide whether they'll alleviate it or exploit it. Why does this matter? Because it protects you. When you integrate your shadow as an empath, you develop the ability to detect dark empaths. You feel the real empathy, but you also feel the calculated manipulation, and that saves you from toxic relationships disguised as deep connection. Jung warned about this. He said, "The integrated shadow gives you insight into the shadow of others. You recognize in others what you've recognized in yourself. And that's evolutionary protection." Huberman talks about this when he discusses theory of mind. The ability to model other people's mental states is an adaptive advantage. But it only works if you have an accurate model of yourself first. If you deny your own shadow, you project goodness onto those who don't have it. If you integrate your shadow, you see clearly the shadow of the other. And that changes everything. So now you know. The rare aura that only true empaths carry isn't a weakness. It's not oversensitivity. It's not a defect to be fixed. It's a rare neurological configuration mapped by Carl Jung in 1921 and validated by Andrew Huberman in 2024 that gives you access to dimensions of social information that 96% of the population simply doesn't process. But this aura only becomes power when you integrate your Jungian shadow, when you stop betraying your boundaries, when you accept that healthy aggression is part of true empathy, when you choose when to absorb and when to block. And that is the protocol. You've just uncovered what academia has been hiding for a century. That deep psychology and modern neuroscience are saying the same thing. That Jung mapped the brain without functional MRI. That Huberman validates Jungian concepts in every episode without directly admitting it. And that you, as a true empath, don't need more empathy. You need shadow integration. This is individuation. This is directed neuroplasticity. This is what happens when you unite Zurich 1921 with Stanford 2024. Now, I need to ask you something. This connection between Jung and Huberman has been suppressed by academia for decades. Few channels have the courage to reveal this, because it challenges the scientific ego that separates deep psychology from modern neuroscience. Each video like this costs hours of cross-referenced research, analysis of recent studies, and the risk of being demonetized for challenging established narratives. The super thanks isn't just financial support. It's you saying that you value knowledge that unites 100 years of psychological wisdom with cutting-edge neuroscientific validation. When you click the golden heart below, you finance the next revelation that academia doesn't want you to see. You become part of those who challenge the artificial separation between Jung and Huberman, between depth and science, between the shadow and the neuron. You're not a passive spectator, you're an ally of integration. And every super thanks is a vote that this kind of content needs to exist. Now, I'm going to give you the last piece of the protocol. The piece that Jung taught in his practice, but never fully published. The piece that Huberman uses, but doesn't connect with Jung. It's the daily protocol for managing empathic energy. Here's how it works. Morning. The first hour after waking is sacred. You don't check messages. You don't consume other people's emotions. You don't expose yourself to news or social media. Why? Because your prefrontal cortex is in a state of maximum plasticity in the morning. This is when you set the neural tone for the day. Huberman calls this the morning neuroplasticity window. Jung called it a centering ritual. Same thing. You get exposure to sunlight for 10 minutes. This resets your circadian rhythm and optimizes cortisol. Then you do what Jung called active imagination, and Huberman calls directed visualization. You visualize your energetic boundaries. Imagine a field around you that you control, that opens when you decide and closes when necessary. This isn't esotericism, it's default mode network training. You're teaching your brain to differentiate self from other, essential for empaths. Afternoon, here. You apply the social dosing protocol. You don't stay emotionally available all the time. Establish windows, 1 hour of deep interaction, half an hour of recovery alone, 2 hours of work without emotional interference, 15 minutes of checking messages. Does it sound robotic? It's neurological. Your limbic system needs cycles of activation and rest. Empaths who stay available full-time enter chronic adrenal fatigue. You're managing allostatic load, the amount of stress your body can process before it collapses. Evening, emotional discharge protocol. You do shadow journaling. Write down everything you felt but didn't express, all the anger you swallowed, every no that became a yes. This activates the prefrontal cortex and deactivates the amygdala. It's conscious emotional processing that prevents repressed emotions from turning into physical symptoms. Then you do what Huberman calls non-sleep deep rest. NSDR, yoga nidra, body scan, or guided meditation. This activates the parasympathetic system and resets your nervous system for the next day. Jung taught Jacobson's progressive relaxation. It's literally the same neural technique, and once a week, you do the shadow individuation ritual. You get your journal, identify patterns. How many times did you say yes when you wanted to say no? With whom did you establish boundaries, and with whom didn't you? What type of person drains you, and what type recharges you? You're mapping your psyche, creating a precise mental model of your neurological limits. And then comes the radical part. You act based on the map. Cut contact with those who chronically drain you. Establish explicit boundaries with those who disrespect you. Say no without guilt to requests that overload you, and observe what happens. In the beginning, it seems like you're being selfish, cruel, insensitive, but that's just your shadow emerging. It's the healthy aggression that was repressed for decades, finally gaining space. And after a few weeks, something changes. You realize that you have more energy, that you can feel empathy without drowning in it, that your presence is more stable, that people respect you more because you stopped betraying your neurology and started honoring your rare configuration. Now, let me tell you what happened with Jung's patients who went through this process, and with people who followed Huberman's protocols without knowing they were integrating the Jungian shadow. Case 1. Woman, 32 years old. Empath diagnosed with chronic burnout and fibromyalgia. Doctors said it was genetic. Psychologists said it was anxiety. Jung would say it was unintegrated shadow. She started the protocol. First week, she identified that she was saying yes to her narcissistic mother. Every time she asked for money, pure shadow, repressed anger, non-existent boundary. Second week, she said no, felt crushing guilt, had an anxiety attack, but she maintained the no. Third week, her mother tried emotional manipulation. She didn't give in. Fourth week, her fibromyalgia pain decreased by 30%. Coincidence? No. When you integrate your shadow and establish boundaries, your nervous system exits a state of chronic threat. Cortisol normalizes, inflammation decreases, pain reduces. 6 months later, fibromyalgia in complete remission. She didn't cure the fibromyalgia. She stopped betraying her neurological boundaries, and her body responded. Case 2. Man, 45 years old, empath working in a toxic corporate environment, absorbed the stress of the team, took other people's problems home, developed hypertension and chronic insomnia. Started Huberman's protocol, sunlight in the morning, high-intensity exercise, supplementation, improved 20%. Good, but not enough. Then he discovered Jung. He realized that he was using empathy to avoid conflict, that he was absorbing the team's emotions to maintain artificial peace, that his shadow was repressed aggression. He started setting boundaries at work. He stopped answering messages outside of work hours. He confronted a passive-aggressive colleague directly. He refused a project that would overwhelm him. And something incredible happened. The team started respecting him more. His boss promoted him because boundaries generate respect and assertiveness generates leadership. 3 months later, the pressure normalized. His insomnia resolved. He integrated the Huberman protocol with his Jungian shadow and became a different person. Case 3. A young woman, 28 years old, a true empath who repeatedly attracted abusive relationships, narcissistic partners, parasitic friends, manipulative family. Traditional therapy told her to work on her self-esteem. It didn't work, because the problem wasn't low self-esteem. It was an unintegrated shadow. She had empathy, but zero healthy aggression. She was the perfect target for emotional predators. She discovered Jung through Huberman, started studying her shadow, did active imagination, confronted her repressed anger, the urge to be selfish, the desire to tell everyone to fug off. And for the first time, she felt her shadow as power, as protection, as a filter. 3 months later, she ended the abusive relationship, cut contact with toxic friends, established boundaries with her family, and met someone healthy, someone who respected her boundaries, who valued her empathy without exploiting it. Because when you integrate your shadow, you emit a different frequency. Narcissists detect it and run. Healthy people detect it and are drawn closer. These 3 cases have something in common. They were all true empaths. They all had hyperactive mirror neurons. They all suffered from betraying their neurological boundaries. And they all transformed when they integrated the Jung-Huberman protocol. It wasn't a magic cure. It was neurological alignment. It was stopping fighting against their own rare configuration. Now I'm going to reveal what's really at stake here, why this information has been suppressed, why Carl Jung was marginalized by mainstream psychology, why Andrew Huberman doesn't cite Jung directly. The answer is uncomfortable. If true empaths integrate their shadow and set boundaries, they stop serving, they stop absorbing, they stop being emotionally available to everyone. And that breaks entire social structures that depend on unintegrated empaths. Dysfunctional families depend on the empath who absorbs conflict and maintains artificial peace. Corporations depend on the empath who overworks and never complains. Abusive relationships depend on the empath who forgives infinitely and never leaves. So there's a systemic interest in keeping empaths unintegrated, in making them believe that sensitivity is weakness, that setting boundaries is selfishness, that healthy aggression is toxicity, all lies, all manipulation, to keep empaths subservient. Jung knew this. That's why he was attacked by academia, called mystical, pseudoscientific, crazy, because he taught individuation. He taught people to stop serving sick collective structures, and that's a threat to systems that depend on conformity. Huberman can't say this directly. He's an academic. He has a reputation. He has funding, but he teaches the protocols. He validates the neurobiology. He proves that Jung was right without saying his name. And smart people connect the dots. You're connecting the dots now. So here's the final revelation. If you're a true empath and you've watched this far, you have a choice. Continue serving structures that drain you. Continue being everyone's emotional sponge. Continue betraying your neurological boundaries until your body collapses. Or integrate your shadow. Establish boundaries. Honor your rare configuration and transform empathy from exploited weakness into directed power. Jung called it individuation. Huberman calls it neural optimization. I call it empath awakening. And it happens when you stop asking permission to be who you are neurologically. You have hyperactive mirror neurons. You detect emotion with surgical precision. You carry a rare aura that only 4% of the population has. This isn't a defect. It's an evolutionary upgrade. But it only works when you integrate your shadow, when you accept that you can't save everyone, that setting boundaries is self-care, that saying no is neurologically necessary, and that healthy aggression is an essential part of true empathy. This is the complete protocol. Jung drew the map, Huberman validated the neuroscience, and you now have both perspectives integrated. Zurich, 1921, meets Stanford, 2024. Deep psychology meets modern neuroscience. Shadow meets neuron. And you find your power. Comment below. Are you an empath who finally understands that you need to integrate your shadow? Or do you still think sensitivity is weakness? Team Shadow. Integrated or team burned out? Nice guy, girl. Choose in the comments.